The forest was quiet that evening. The human walked slowly through the tall grass, listening to the strange sounds of alien birds, his boots pressed against the damp soil, leaving marks behind him. The sun was falling low in the sky, painting the horizon with red and gold light. Yet the air felt heavy, as if something was hiding behind the trees. He stopped for a moment when he heard the sound of water flowing nearby, and followed the sound until he reached a wide silver lake, its surface glowing. Like glass under the fading sun, he could see mist rising above the water, and strange glowing plants at the edge. As he walked closer, his eyes caught something unusual. There were torn pieces of cloth scattered near the shore, soft fabric that did not belong to this forest. He bent down and touched it. The cloth was warm, as if it had been taken off only moments ago. He looked around carefully. His hand moved to his side, where he carried a small knife. The forest around him grew silent. The birds stopped singing, the air grew still. He felt a chill in his bones, then he heard a voice. "Please help me, human." The voice was trembling, filled with fear and sadness. He turned quickly and saw a figure rise from the water, an alien woman. Her skin had a faint glow in the dim light. Her long, wet hair clung to her shoulders. Her eyes were wide with panic. She crossed her arms over her chest, trying to hide herself. She cried again. "They stole my clothes. Human, please help me." The human froze for a moment. His breath caught in his throat. He was not expecting anyone to be here, especially not a woman like her. She looked fragile, yet there was a strange beauty about her. Her voice cracked as if she had been holding back tears. Her body shook with the cold water dripping down her arms. He stepped closer, but carefully. His mind warned him this could be a trick. Yet something in her eyes felt real. She was desperate, afraid, exposed. He could not ignore her plea. He asked, "Who stole your clothes?" She looked over her shoulder into the dark trees. Her voice shook. "My tribe hunters, they want to shame me. They laughed and ran away with my robe. They know I was bathing alone. They waited for this moment. I cannot go back like this. If they find me, I will be ruined. Please, you are human, you are stranger, but you are my only hope." The human looked at the dark forest and felt eyes watching from the shadows. His hand tightened around the knife. He knew someone was near. Maybe the hunters she spoke of. He looked at her again, shivering in the water, too afraid to step out without cover. His heart pulled him toward her, even as his mind told him to be careful. He removed his outer coat slowly and placed it near the water. His voice was calm. "Come out and take this." She stared at him with surprise. Her lips trembled. She whispered, "You would give this to me, though you do not know me, though I am alien?" He nodded. "Just come quickly." She stepped out of the water. Her feet touched the cold soil. Her wet hair shined in the dim light, and she quickly wrapped the coat around her body, clutching it tightly. She whispered, "Thank you, human. No one else would have helped me." He looked into her eyes and saw pain mixed with relief, but also fear. She whispered again, "They will come back. They will not stop until they break me. Please do not leave me alone." The human felt the forest grow darker around them. The wind carried distant laughter, faint but cruel. He realized they were being watched. The danger was closer than he thought, and the night was only beginning. The night air grew heavy as the human and the alien woman stood near the glowing lake. The soft mist wrapped around them like a blanket, hiding them, yet also trapping them. Her hands clutched his coat tightly. Her body shook from cold and fear. Her wide eyes looked into the forest again and again, as if shadows were alive. The human listened carefully, his ears catching faint movements like footsteps hidden under leaves. He felt the presence of eyes watching them from the dark corners of the trees. She whispered in a trembling voice, "They are near, I can feel them, their laughter. It follows me even when I close my eyes." Her words were broken, but the pain in them was sharp. She looked down, clutching the coat as if it were her only shield. The human felt his chest tighten, for he knew this was no simple cry for help. There was truth in her fear. He asked her softly, "Why would they do this to you? What crime have you done against your own kind?" She shook. her head tears mixing with the drops of water still falling from her wet hair. She said, "I refused him, the warrior they chose for me. I was meant to obey, but I could not bind myself to him. His cruelty was endless. I spoke against him. And for that, they marked me, cursed me. Now I am nothing to them, only a tool for their games. They want to see me broken. Humiliated, my voice silenced forever." She looked at the ground, her voice low like the sound of falling rain. The human clenched his fists. He could feel anger rising inside him. He hated cruelty. He hated injustice. And here it was before his very eyes. Suddenly a branch snapped in the forest. The sound cut through the silence like a blade. The human raised his knife, his eyes scanning the dark shapes between the trees. A faint glow appeared. 2 yellow eyes staring at them, then disappearing behind the shadows. He stepped forward, but the alien woman grabbed his arm, her voice desperate. "No. If you leave me, they will take me. Please do not leave me alone." Her plea was enough to keep him still. He stood in front of her, placing himself like a shield. Her breath was fast, her chest rising and falling with terror. The night grew colder, and the wind carried faint whispers like mocking. Voices carried through the trees. The human tightened his grip on the knife, his mind racing. He knew they were being tested, hunted like prey. They wanted to scare them, to make them weak before the real attack. He whispered, "Stay behind me no matter what happens, stay close." She nodded silently, though her hands shook and her eyes filled with tears. She tried to be strong, but her fear was heavy. The human's gaze swept the ground around them. He noticed strange marks, footprints pressed deep into the wet soil. They were not his and not hers. They were larger, heavier. The hunters had been circling them already. He realized they were trapped like animals waiting for the strike. His heart pounded, but he forced himself calm. His only chance was to use his mind and the forest itself. He guided her slowly toward a cluster of thick trees where the moonlight could not reach. He whispered low, "Keep quiet, step carefully. Do not let them hear." She obeyed each step, shaking each breath tight in her throat. The forest felt alive, every rustle of leaves a warning, every shadow a threat. The human could feel the hunter's patience thinning. Soon they would strike. Then the sound came sharp and fast. A spear flew past, grazing the bark of a tree only. Inches from his face, it struck the ground with force, quivering as if alive. The woman gasped, covering her mouth, her eyes wide with terror. The human pulled her close, his body shielding her, his mind racing. He whispered to himself, "They are here and they will not stop." The night had only just begun, and the hidden threat was now standing all around them, unseen but ready to strike. The spear still trembled in the ground. The human's hand tightened on the knife. His breath heavy, the alien woman clung to his arm, her eyes wide, her voice stuck in her throat. The silence after the attack was worse than the sound itself, because it told him more were waiting. The forest was no longer calm. It was a cage filled with hunters who were unseen yet. Closed the human, felt the weight of every shadow pressing on him. Suddenly laughter echoed between the trees, low and mocking. It rolled through the dark like a cruel song. The woman shivered. She whispered, "They are toying with us. They will come from every side." The human knew she was right. He pulled her hand and said, "Move now, we must not wait." Another spear cut through the air and buried itself into a trunk near her head. She cried out, but he pulled her faster, and they ran into the deeper woods. The trees were thick. The ground uneven, branches whipped against their faces, roots threatened to catch their feet, but they kept moving. His eyes scanned ahead, looking for a path, while behind him the sound of running feet grew louder. The hunters were chasing them, their heavy steps crushing leaves, their cruel voices calling after them with words he did not understand. But their meaning was clear. They wanted her, and they wanted her broken. The human pushed forward, guiding her through narrow passages, between fallen logs, his mind sharp though his chest burned with effort. He thought only of keeping her alive. The woman stumbled, but he lifted her quickly, urging her on. She whispered, "I cannot keep running. My body is weak." He answered, "We do not stop. If we stop, they win." His voice was firm, strong, like a shield around her. The night was alive with danger. Spears flashed in the dark, some striking trees, some flying close enough to cut the air near his ears. He pulled her low into a bush, and they crawled through the thick brush. The hunters shouted behind them, frustrated at losing sight for a moment, but soon the sounds came closer again. The human knew they could not outrun them forever. He had to find another way. The forest opened suddenly, into a hollow where moonlight spilled across the ground. The ruins of stone pillars stood tall, broken and ancient, covered in glowing vines. The human stopped for a moment. Surprised, the woman gasped when she saw it. Her eyes wide with recognition, her whisper filled with fear. "This place is forbidden. No one enters here. The spirits guard it." Her voice trembled. The human did not understand, but he saw no other choice. If they stayed outside, they would be caught. He said, "We go in." He dragged her toward the ruins. The hunters' voices grew louder. They had seen movement behind the pillars. The human pushed her against the stone wall and stood in front, ready to fight. The woman clutched his coat, whispering, "You do not know the danger here. You do not know what sleeps in these stones," he answered. "Danger is already behind us. I will face what comes." Suddenly, the ground beneath them glowed, faint lines of light spreading across the stone floor, forming shapes like stars. The woman gasped. "No, the ruins have awakened." The human felt the hum of energy rise under his boots. The hunters arrived, circling the outer edge, their eyes shining in the moonlight, their spears ready, but none stepped forward. They muttered in their own tongue, fear flickering across their cruel faces. The human looked around, knife ready, heart pounding. The woman clung tighter, her body shaking, yet she whispered, "They fear this place, but they will still come. Their hate for me is stronger than fear." The human set his jaw. He would not let them have her. The chase had led them here to this place of power, and whatever waited in the ruins might become their only chance for survival. The hunters stood outside the circle of the ruins, their eyes glowing, faintly in the moonlight, their hands gripping spears, their bodies tense. They shouted in their strange tongue, but none dared step across the glowing lines on the stone floor. The human stood still, his knife ready, his breath heavy. He could feel the vibration under his boots, like the ruins themselves were alive. The alien woman pressed against the ancient wall, her face pale, her voice a whisper. "This place is forbidden. These stones are older than my people. They say spirits guard them." The human glanced at her, his voice steady but quiet. "Then maybe these spirits are the only allies we have tonight." She shook her head, fear flooding her wide eyes. "You do not understand. They do not forgive those who disturb their rest." Her voice cracked, but she still clung to his coat as if his presence gave her courage. The glowing patterns on the floor shifted slowly, like flowing water, forming circles and lines that pulsed with strange energy. The human bent low to study them, his hand hovering. Over the surface he felt warmth rising from the stone, almost like a heartbeat. His chest tightened with wonder and dread. The hunters outside hissed and muttered. Their leader lifted his spear, pointing toward the woman. Their voices grew louder, demanding her return. The woman trembled. She whispered, "If I step outside, they will drag me back. They will strip me and parade me before the tribe. My shame will be their triumph." Her words shook with pain and despair. The human felt anger rise inside him, his voice firm. "Then you will not step outside, not while I breathe." He stood tall, his back straight, his eyes locked on the hunters beyond the glowing barrier. The hunters began to throw spears, but the moment the weapons touched the glowing lines, they shattered into fragments of light, vanishing before hitting the human. The woman gasped, her hands pressed to her mouth. "The ruins protect us," she whispered. Though her voice was filled with both awe and fear, the hunters roared in anger, their voices shaking the air, yet still none crossed the boundary. The human guided the woman deeper into the ruins. Broken arches stood above them. Vines with tiny glowing flowers crawled across the walls. The air was heavy but strangely warm, like the ruins carried a hidden fire. He told her, "Rest for a moment. Gather your strength." She sank onto a smooth stone bench, her wet hair clinging to her face. She looked up at him, eyes glistening with tears. "You risk so much for me, human. Why would you?" she asked, her voice soft, almost lost in the hum of the ruins. He knelt before her. his voice calm because no one deserves what they have done to you, and because leaving you to suffer would make me less than human. She blinked at his words, her lips parting as if she could not believe anyone would say such a thing. Her hands trembled as she gripped his coat, whispering, "You are not like them. You see me as more than shame." The ground trembled suddenly, a deep sound rising from the depths of the ruins. The glowing lines flared brighter, filling the air with sharp white light. The woman gasped, clutching the stone bench. "Spirits," she whispered. "They are stirring." The human stood ready, knife tight in his hand. Though he did not know if it would help the hunters, outside fell silent, their glowing eyes fixed on the ruins, fear etched in their faces. A cold wind swept through the broken arches, carrying whispers in a language the human could not understand. The woman bowed her head, whispering words of apology, begging forgiveness, her body shaking with fear. The human placed a steady hand on her shoulder, his voice strong. "We cannot bow to fear if these spirits exist. They must see truth. They must see. I stand not as their enemy, but as protector of the weak." His words echoed against the glowing stones. The light pulsed again, then slowly dimmed. The air grew calm, but the tension remained. The hunters still waited outside the ruins, still watched, and the woman still shivered at the unknown presence that lingered. The human knew the night was far from over, and within these ancient walls their real trial was only beginning. The ruins were quiet now, though the hum of energy still lingered under the stone floor. The hunters had fallen back into the shadows, but their glowing eyes still watched from the edge of the trees. The human stood near the broken arch, his knife ready, his chest rising and falling with steady breath. The alien woman sat on the cold bench, her hands gripping his coat tightly, as if she feared he might vanish if she let go. Her face pale, yet her eyes carried something deeper than fear. It was a weight of secrets, heavy and unspoken. The human crouched before her, his voice steady. "Tell me the truth. Why do they hate you so much? Why would they risk the wrath of these ruins just to see you broken?" She lowered her head, her wet hair falling across her cheeks for a long moment. She stayed silent, as if the words burned inside her chest. Finally, her lips parted and she whispered, "I was not always hunted. Once I was chosen to be joined with one of their strongest warriors." She lifted her hand slowly, pulling the coat from her shoulder, and revealed a scar carved into her skin, a mark glowing faintly in the dim light. It was a symbol, sharp and cruel, pressed deep by fire. She trembled as she traced it with her finger, her voice shaking. "This is the mark of refusal. I was meant to submit to the warrior they gave me, but I would not." His heart was cruel, his hands violent, his soul empty. "I spoke against him before the council. I rejected the bond they demanded, and for that I was punished." The human stared at the scar, anger burning in his chest. He clenched his fists, his voice rough. "They scarred you for speaking your will." She nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "Worse than that, they exiled me, stripped me of honor. No one may speak my name. No one may help me. They want me to suffer until I beg to crawl back in shame." Her voice cracked, but she kept speaking. "I bathed in the lake tonight because it was the only place left to me, the only place where I felt clean, if only for a breath. And still they followed me to take even that from me." The human felt rage grow, but also pity. Her strength to resist her own people spoke louder than any words he could say. He placed his hand gently on her shoulder, his voice calm but strong. "You are not broken. You stood against cruelty. That is not weakness, that is power." She looked at him, her lips trembling, her eyes filling with something new, not just fear but hope. She whispered softly, "But they will never stop until I am dragged back, until I am made an example." The hunters outside laughed again, their voices drifting through the air, mocking, cruel. The woman flinched, her hand gripping his coat tighter, her voice pleading, "You should leave me. They will not stop. But if you stay, they will kill you." The human shook his head, his voice steady. "Then they will have to try." A sudden rumble rolled beneath them. The ruins, glowing brighter. The scar on her shoulder shined in response. The woman gasped, clutching her skin. The lines on the stone floor pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. The human looked around alarmed while she whispered, "No, The ruins they respond to. Why would they answer me unless the spirits see my exile differently than my people? The hunters outside stepped back uneasily, their voices no longer mocking but filled with tension. The human realized the scar, the exile, the pain she carried, was more than punishment. It was a key to something greater. The ruins knew her. The spirits had not rejected her. The air grew colder. The glowing vines above them shivered as if breathing. The woman held her scar, whispering, "I am cursed. Yet maybe I am also chosen." The human met her eyes, his voice firm. "Then we stand together. Whatever this curse or gift means, we face it as one." She stared at him long and hard, then lowered her head, a single tear sliding down her cheek, and for the first time, her voice held strength. "Thank you, human. You see me as no one else has ever seen me." The night grew heavier around the ruins. The hunters no longer laughed. Their voices turned sharp and angry, echoing through the forest as they circled like wolves, their glowing eyes peering between the trees, their spears glinting in the moonlight. The human stood at the edge of the glowing lines, knife in hand, his body tense but unshaken. The alien woman clung to his coat, her scar faintly glowing beneath the fabric, her breath fast and shallow. She whispered, "They will come soon. They will not fear forever. They hate me more than they fear the spirits." The human's jaw tightened, his voice calm. "Then let them come. They will find I am not so easy to break." The woman shook her head, her voice desperate. "You cannot fight them all. You are only one." He looked back at her, his eyes steady. Sometimes one is enough if he stands in the right place. His words gave her a strength she had not felt in years. Suddenly the hunters roared in unison. The ground trembled under their charge, spears raised. They rushed from the shadows toward the ruins, their leader. A massive figure with armor of bone lifted his weapon high, his voice booming in their tongue. The woman gasped, her body shaking. "That is him. The one I refused, the one who marked me." Her fear was sharp, but her anger burned through it too. The human stepped forward as the first spears crossed the glowing lines of the ruins, but instead of shattering this time, they pierced the ground, sending sparks of light into the air. The barrier was weakening. The ruins were responding differently, their hum rising louder as if stirred to anger. The woman clutched her scar, pain flashing in her eyes. She cried, "They are breaking the protection. We cannot stay still." The human pulled her behind, a fallen pillar, and crouched low as spears rained down. The stone cracked around them. Shards flying through the air, the hunters pressed closer, their leader shouting commands, their feet stomping like drums. The human breathed steady, his mind racing. He picked up one of the broken spears, its tip glowing faintly from the ruin's power, and hurled it back with force. It struck the ground at the hunter's feet, exploding into light. The attackers stumbled back in shock. The woman stared at him wide. "I'd you wield the ruins," she whispered. The human gripped another broken spear and nodded. "Perhaps these stones fight with us tonight." The hunters regrouped, their leader furious. He rushed forward, crossing the glowing line for the first time, his massive body slamming against the ground, his eyes burning with rage. His weapon raised high. The woman screamed, but the human met him. Steel against bone. The clash echoed like thunder. The leader swung heavy, but the human was fast, ducking low, striking. Back with the glowing spear, sparks flew across the stone floor. The woman pressed against the wall, praying, her voice trembling. "Spirits, hear me, protect him. Protect us." The ruins pulsed brighter as if answering her call. The glowing vines above lit the air with pale fire, casting strange shadows across the hunters' faces. The fight raged fierce, the human striking again and again, his knife flashing, his arms burning with effort, but his resolve unbroken. The leader growled, swinging with fury, yet each strike met resistance from the ruins' glow. The hunters watched, their courage faltering as the battle grew wild. The woman cried out, raising her hand, the scar blazing with light. Suddenly, the floor beneath the leader cracked, a burst of energy, throwing him back with a roar, his weapon clattering away. The hunters froze. Their voices hushed, their eyes wide in terror. The ruins had chosen a side. The woman trembled, her hand still glowing, tears streaming down her cheeks. She whispered, "They hear me, they see me, not cursed, not broken." The human caught his breath, sweat dripping down his face, his voice firm. "Then they will fear you now, as they should." The leader struggled to rise, but the hunters began to retreat, their courage shattered by the ruins' power, their voices echoing with fear as they vanished into the forest. Only the sound of heavy breathing and the soft hum of the stones remained. The human stood tall, his chest rising, his knife still ready. The woman fell to her knees, clutching her scar, whispering, "Thank you, spirits, thank you. Human, for standing beside me when no one else would." The ruins were silent after the battle. The hunters had fled into the trees, leaving only the faint echo of their retreating voices. The broken weapons still glowed faintly on the stone floor like dying stars. The human stood with his chest rising heavy with each breath, his knife still tight in his hand. Sweat dripping down his face, yet his eyes sharp and unyielding. The alien woman knelt beside him, her scar burning with a faint light, her body trembling not from fear but from the weight of what had just happened. She lifted her eyes to him, her voice soft but filled with wonder. "You stood against them when no one else would. You risked your life for me even when you had no reason." The human shook his head, his voice steady. There was every reason. Cruelty must always be answered with courage. She lowered her gaze. Tears slipping down her cheeks, she whispered, "I have lived so long, thinking I was cursed, unwanted, shamed, but tonight the ruins themselves answered me. They did not reject me, they gave me strength." The human helped her to her feet, his hand firm and steady. Her fingers lingered on his palm, her grip strong though her body weak. She looked into his eyes and whispered, "I do not know why you came to this place, human, but perhaps fate brought you here. Perhaps the spirits guided you." His lips curved into the faintest smile, perhaps, or perhaps I simply heard a cry and chose to answer it. Her heart stirred at those words, simple yet powerful, because no one else had ever answered her cries before. The ruins glowed softer now, the vines overhead swayed gently, as if breathing in calm. The scar on her shoulder faded to a dull mark, though its presence was still clear. She touched it and whispered, "This mark once felt like chains, but now it feels like proof. Proof that I stood against them. Proof that I survived." The human nodded, his voice quiet but firm. "You are stronger than they ever believed, and now they know it." The woman's eyes filled with fire, her voice stronger than before. "They will come again. They will not forgive what happened here. They will call me witch, cursed, dangerous, but I will not run anymore. I will not bow anymore." The human placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice calm. "Then you will not stand alone." Her eyes widened, her lips parted in disbelief. "You would stay even after tonight, even knowing what they will do?" He nodded firmly. "Yes, because walking away now would mean everything I fought tonight meant nothing." She swallowed hard, her heart racing as she whispered, "You are strange, human. No one of my people has ever spoken such words. No one has ever seen me as more than a burden." His hand remained steady on her shoulder, his eyes unwavering. "I do not see a burden. I see someone who refused chains, someone worth standing beside." Her chest tightened, tears filled her eyes, but this time they were not of fear or despair. They were of something new, something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. The ruins pulsed once more, a faint circle of light rising around them like a quiet blessing. The hunters still lingered far in the forest watching, but none dared step close, their fear of the ruins stronger than their hatred. The human looked at the woman and saw the truth of her spirit, not weak, not cursed, but fierce and alive. She looked back at him, and for the first time her lips curved into a small smile. Fragile but real. She whispered, "Thank you, human, not just for saving me, but for giving me back the part of myself I thought was gone forever." He answered simply, "No thanks needed, only promises, and my promise is this. As long as I draw breath, you will never face them alone." She bowed her head, pressing her hand to his chest, her voice trembling. "Then I am not afraid anymore." The night above them stretched, endless stars shining across the dark sky. The ruins hummed softly. The forest held its breath. The human and the alien woman stood together, bound not by chains, not by fear, but by choice, by defiance, and by a bond stronger than the hatred of her tribe. And in that bond a new beginning was forged.